Hey everybody, it's Gypsy, and welcome to On the Edge of Appalachia. Oh, what is today? August 6th, I think. Okay, everybody, so I thought today we would talk about gardening with a disability. So I have a lot of people ask me, how do I garden with a bad leg? Okay, so a bad leg is not my only disability. Um, I have a lot of disabilities, like besides depression and a grief from the loss of my son. I have a lot of physical ones now, and I think the main one these days is my leg. I'll tell you a little bit of my story. um Now that I'm older, well, I had a stroke at the age of 44. I'm having my tea out in my garden. I love it. It left me with a blind spot. I was legally blind for about 8 months after my stroke. um It's normal for about 6 months or so to have fatigue after you have a stroke. Well, mine never went away. I went straight into chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, it was really, I was in bed a lot, I slept a lot, etc. It was really bad. Um, it did seem to clear up for a while, but I don't think it's really gone because I do have times now where I start sleeping a lot again. I'll fall asleep in the middle of the day or after dinner. I'm out cold for 2, 3 hours. Miss Rihanna. But it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. So it's like it's there, and I do have to be aware of it and deal with that. Make sure I take care of myself, I guess. Um, but yeah, and I have a lot of bone issues. My osteoporosis, the T score is like negative 3.6, which my doctor says is pretty bad. So my bones are very, I don't know what you call that. But I also have like in the cervical area of my spine, the lumbar. I have degenerative disc disease that has caused me to lose height. I hope my son doesn't see this because he will he teases me about my height. Anyways, um, but stuff like that. Miss, ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't know what's with her this morning. Okay, if you're a good girl, you can sit here. I'm sorry. I don't know where my other two cats are right now. But anyways, what made me start feeling better, believe it or not, with the chronic fatigue was after my son died. I spent a few years, in the same place that it happened, like not where it happened, but where I received the news and stuff like that, in the same house for a few years. But it got to the point I couldn't take it anymore. So what I did, to kind of help myself with my grief, I got a truck and a trailer, and I lived on the road for 4 years. I lived in my trailer for 4 years, traveling the country. It was a blast. Now, the last, I'm going to say like 8, 9 months, I lived in a little town in New Mexico, because I had purchased a small piece of land, which I was going to turn into a homestead, and I was trying. It was not easy because it was a high desert. Things don't grow there like they do here. Here, you could stick a rock in the ground here, and I think it would grow something. So it was really difficult. But I don't know. I'm not going to get into the details of how I fell, but I fell. I was alone on my property, and it was very sparse. So there was, no one close enough by they could hear me yelling for them. I tried. And, about 2 weeks after my fall, more of my memory came back. And it's really strange because when I looked down at my leg, it was grotesque. It was disgusting. The shape my leg was in. But here's the thing. I was alone, and I was outside. Thank God I wasn't too far from my trailer, but I had left my phone in the trailer on my table. And so I had to call for help. I had to grit my teeth and bear the pain and walk on my elbows. I could not move my left leg. Every move I made was excruciating. Somehow, I made it into that trailer and I called for help. Something about doing that crawling and getting into the trailer did straighten out my leg, and I was in a lot of shock. So by the time I got in the trailer, I had forgotten what I saw. Something, oh, it's just I knocked my kneecap out of place, which I've done before when I was a child. So I assumed it was that. I couldn't remember. I mean, knocking your kneecap out of place is very painful. Um, I couldn't remember the level of pain and that I was in even more pain. I couldn't remember that when I knocked my kneecap out of place, I had more mobility. Anyways, got to the hospital. I had to have emergency surgery. Every time the doctor came in to talk to me, it was like the news was even worse. I figured, okay, if I broke my leg, they'll put a cast on me and I go home. That's my view of a broken leg. I was very naive back then. Anyways, what the doctor told me was I had fractured my tibia plateau. And I remember right before surgery, he did a scan on my leg to get a better idea of what was going on. But I went right from scan to surgery. Every time they had to move me from one table to another, I was screaming. I'm not a screamer, but I was screaming. The pain was so bad. I never experienced, I mean, this was worse than childbirth, believe it or not. Anyways, I come out of surgery and he comes and he goes, well, the news is even worse, because he had told me I would be non-weight bearing for, I think he said 6 weeks. I said, okay. So I come out of surgery and he comes to my room and he goes, things have changed. I said, what do you mean? He said, it was much worse than I thought, the damage to your leg. He says, you not only fractured your tibia plateau, I had to pull bone shards out of your shin. He said, you shattered your tibia. I had to pull those out and then re-glue them back in. And he said, and I told you I was going to put a metal plate in this big. He goes, now I had to put one in that goes all the way down your leg. So now instead of having a scar like this, he goes, you have one that goes like this. So it goes across my knee and all the way down my leg. So I'm like, okay. And he just, so what that means is you are non-weight bearing for 3 months. I'm like, mm-hmm. Now, when all is said and done, by the time physical therapy and all this other stuff gets set up, when you're at that 3-month mark and you have to learn how to use a walker, and then from the walker you have to learn how to walk, okay? So I actually ended up like in the wheelchair longer than I expected, because when I heard non-weight bearing, I thought I would just get up and, no. Anyways, and for any of you going through this, I'm not trying to scare you. Anyways, the worst part was what he said. He says, I know you love to garden and you're working on a garden. He goes, you cannot garden for at least a year. And I was like, what? And I was like, tears were welling up. And he says, also, I am aware you are a nomad. You have a property that is totally off-grid and you live in a travel trailer. He said, because of that, he says, you cannot go back home. You can't live like that. You cannot take care of yourself. You need somebody. Now, my family was all up in Ohio. My son and daughter are truck drivers. It was like, oh my God. So it was crazy. So I could not garden for at least a year. I was so depressed. Anyways, I ended up back here. I ended up like in 2 different hospitals because I ended up with a blood clot. So I had to go back into the hospital when I got up here to Ohio. And I ended up being in 2 different rehab centers because of all this. So I was down in New Mexico. I was in a rehab center for a while. Came back up here, had a blood clot, ended up back in a rehab center. So I get out, I come home, and spring is approaching. You know, it's springtime, early spring, and I am like itching to garden, but I'm not allowed. The doctor said no. Whatever you do, do not garden. So I thought there has got to be a way I could at least do a little bit of gardening, a little bit, just to keep my sanity and keep me happy. Now, I want to say, I'm talking about my disabilities. Okay, there are so many various disabilities I'm not even aware of. So if you love gardening and you have a disability, um, there is a possibility. What I'm trying to give you some hope that there is a possibility that you can get creative enough to make it work for you. Now, since I don't know what all the disabilities are, I could be wrong about that, but I'm saying maybe, I hope. So this is what I did. I thought, what if I find one of those raised beds that are on, like, they're raised up at like sitting height and they're on wheels? What if I got one of those and I did a little herb garden? And that's what I did. And that kept me happy. I had this cute little herb garden, and I would, you know, get wheeled outside on the patio, and I would sit in front of it and I would garden. And then towards the end of the summer, I was using a walker. So I would hobble out my walker, and somebody in the family put a chair out there for me in front of my raised bed garden. And that kept me happy. Okay. Now, I don't know if, let me see if I could, let me see. Okay. So you see this right here? That's where I have my fairy garden now. That was the raised bed that I had my herb garden in the year my leg was in this huge brace, and I was, you know. And so now I use it for that. But it helps. And you can see it's perfect if you're in a chair and you're sitting right in front of it, you can do it. Um, you know, so the following year, I think, yeah, I was at a year after my surgery, and my doctor gave me the go-ahead, use the big girl shovel. In other words, I could garden. And he told me, but what I don't want you doing is kneeling. And you don't have to worry about that, because my biggest fear about kneeling is not being able to get up. I also know, I remember like one time, and this was a long time after my surgery, went to go kneel. I was making the bed, and I went to kneel on the bed, and I screamed in pain. Anyways, yeah, so it's like, you don't have to worry about that. So he said, don't kneel. So I started in 2024 my full garden out here. Now, this is where people say, how do you do this with a bad leg? Very slowly and very carefully. Very slowly. So it's like preparing beds and stuff like that. What I do is, first of all, I have to assess, can I do this today? How does my leg feel? How's my fatigue doing, etc.? You know, things like that. I have a whole other long list of diagnoses, but I don't really think about them. So when somebody asks me, it's like I literally have to go look at my medical chart, because I don't want it to be I don't want it to define me, and I don't want it to hold me back. But I do know my limitations, what I can and cannot do. So if I am feeling up to preparing a garden bed, I will do a small one, okay? I do a very tiny bit at a time. So by the end of the growing season last year, I had that fenced-in garden. It was smaller, and I had quite a few beds in there, okay? But it was all done. So how did I would Okay, I would decide what I want to plant. Okay, I want to plant such and such. Find out when it needs to be planted. And I would give myself plenty of time to turn that soil, amend that soil, prepare that soil before it needed to be planted, okay? And I still do that today, okay? Because I still need to do that because things add up. If you're older, when you have this injury, it doesn't just, oh, I can do whatever I want now. This what the young people who have this injury say. The older people don't. Anyways, it's how I do it. Little sections at a time. And I'm going to show you what I did this morning. And it was very small. I am not going to prepare another bed because I'm putting in my cold crops. I will probably do another bed tomorrow. What did I planted kale today. Bok choy I'm thinking about doing. I might do a little bed for that. So that is how I garden. Now, I put in that one bed today. I might do a little bit of weeding. I also, this was a very hard point for me to get to. And I think I got to it recently. When you have disabilities, you have to go easier on yourself. The biggest mistake you can make is comparing yourself, your garden, to other people's gardens. Okay, now thankfully I am the like wild and crazy woo-woo out there in the middle of the woods type of person. So my garden's looking wild for me is beautiful. I love it. But, people say, oh, but you need to weed here, or you need to, or you should. People were always commenting, like on my videos, you should do this, or you need to do this. I don't say I can't, and I don't tell them I have disabilities. I just really don't say anything, or I'll just, press the like button, whatever. But it always embarrassed me. And when I would see other people's gardens, I would be embarrassed. But I've recently reached the point where I know I accept it. I cannot, and I probably never will heal enough that I could have the perfect gardens. They're not going to be, pristine. Okay? So what I'm saying is when you have a disability, don't compare yourself. You have to get to that point where you do what you can. Believe me, gardening, while you have disabilities, if you're gardening, you should be proud. Be in awe and amazement of yourself if you have a disability and you are gardening, okay? Don't worry what other people are doing. Don't worry what other people say. They don't know you have a disability. They are probably offering advice nicely. But it's hard, when you know you can't, okay? So I recently reached the point where, okay, I'm having a problem with crabgrass. I can't keep up. Like I said, I did that one bed today. I might do a little weeding. It's probably not going to put much of a dent in it, but at least I'm doing a little bit. The rest of the yard, the rest of the gardens, they're a mess because of weeds. With the rains we had, no, not the, it got really cool recently. I was able to do more weeding. Okay. So that's the point I have reached mentally with my gardening. Hey, at least I'm growing food for me and my family. Okay. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It's producing. Okay. I don't care what it looks like anymore. I mean, I can't say totally. Uh-oh, did I feel rain? We're not supposed to get rain today. Anyways, it's okay. Is it working? Is it producing? That's what's important. And I do work on like my cottage garden right now. I love my cottage garden. And there's a certain look I'm trying to get with it. But first of all, I need more stepping stones and stuff like that. So anyways, also if it's a hot day, I don't garden in the afternoon. I do everything in the morning that I can. So, all right. I told you guys I picked 18 ears of corn. I have to shuck those and decide what I'm going to do with, I'm going to sort them into piles and what am I going to do with each pile. Do that kind of stuff. In the afternoon, I will work on my art, or I will sew, I will clean, I will cook, whatever. I don't work out here too much. Now, if my knee is really bad, I do something more like my art or crocheting where I'm not on my feet. Okay? You have to work with what you have. Now, where I am now in 2025, my last x-rays, what my doctor told me will first be decided on the gel injections. It hurts like hell when you get them, but when they kick in, they're good. I think mine are just, this was in March, I think mine are just starting to wear off. I'm not looking forward to having to get them again, but they hurt. But they do work. So I was able to do pretty good with my gardening. What he told me with my x-rays, okay, I needed another, my disability placard that you hang in your wall was running out. After my surgery, they gave me a prescription. It was maybe for like a year and a half, something like that. So when I asked him, I was kind of embarrassed to ask because I'm like, maybe I'm not bad enough to have one, and I don't want to take advantage, etc. So I felt guilty. So he goes, oh yeah, let me, write your prescription for one. He hands me the prescription. He goes, this one's for 5 years. And I was like, 5 years? I said, I was almost afraid you wouldn't tell me no. He goes, well, this is the perfect time for me to talk to you about your x-rays. I'm like, what? He says, you have arthritis in both knees as well as I was born with a bad hip. As your hip, and, I have bursitis in my hip also. He goes, your right knee is mild. I was going to say, I don't even feel any pain in my right knee. He goes, your left knee, the one that got hurt, is really, it's progressing. You're almost bone on bone. And I said, how close am I to surgery, to knee replacement? He goes, you're getting there. So it's where I am now. Now, what he tells me, he goes, if you feel the need to kneel, especially in the garden, because he knows I'm a big gardener, it's raining, you need to be wearing knee pads. So anyways, I'm going to have to wrap this section up here because it's starting to rain. I didn't even know. Okay, so I came out here 7 o'clock this morning. And what I did from here, where you see the cute kitty, all the way over to that first pepper plant, I prepared this soil, broke it up, and I amended it, mixed it in, leveled it out, and then I planted kale seeds here. That's probably about the extent. I'm not going to plant anymore. I don't think it would be wise. Okay, so I work this way, very small, like the other day, this little area here, and this bed was, it had already been turned for previous planting, so the hardest part was done. I amended, did the, other stuff, but I work in very, very small sections. So last winter, my son and daughter-in-law come to me, and they say, you want to try growing corn? Well, I had to explain to them. Now, I know a lot of people, they will grow just a couple few stalks, one sometimes. Well, you can't do one, I don't think. But my grandpa was a coal miner and a farmer. He had a farm. And he always said, if you want good corn and you want a good harvest, you need to have something bigger. You don't have to have huge, but bigger than just a few stalks if you want to get something, if you want decent corn. And I explained this to my son and daughter-in-law. Now, I said, you guys know, I do everything on a small scale. I cannot prepare the soil for corn. So, the rest of the family, the 3 of them, prepared the soil for me. And then I planted. So we have this beautiful section here because of them. Thank you very much, you guys. I have a great family. But what I do, okay, so this garden here, This was all I had, this half here. Okay, now I do add to it as time goes by. Okay, so it does look bigger, but it's always done in very small sections. And when you feel up to it and the time is right, you can add to it. So this year, I widened the garden from here over to here. Okay, all done. I mean, you have to have patience. I'm the type of person, when I think of something, I want it now. But as I get older, I realize, and especially with having this injury, I cannot do this. You would think I would have learned that when I had chronic fatigue, when the chronic fatigue syndrome was really bad. No, I was a big baby with that. I was so angry. Being in bed most of the time was not pleasant. Especially when you like to be outdoors. Anyways, so I think, and I'm just, every disability is different and every person is different. So it's not like I can tell you what to do. I can't. You have to make the decision. You have to assess it yourself because only you know what you can and cannot do. Only you know what pain you're feeling at any given time. It's all up to you, okay? You have to decide what you can and cannot do. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I do. In case you want to, wow, look at that bee. I've never seen one like that. It's like white. I've never seen it. Anyways, sorry. Everybody's different. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm telling you my story in the hopes that, if you want a garden and you have a disability, maybe you could come up with a way to do it. So, I think I'm going to leave you with that. Bless the bee and make it a joyful one.